All right, I think we're good to go. So, hi, my name is Deacon Basil, and I am here with Chris Wojak, and this is our first ever, actually, Chris, our first ever YouTube, what we're calling Mount Tabor Chats. And a lot of times people kind of wonder what's going on with what's going on behind the voices on our podcast, or kind of who we are. So we figured, hey, in this time of it's actually social distancing, I guess, is what we're doing right now. In this time of social distancing, maybe we come to you from, well, I'm in the grungy basement office. I don't know where you're at, Chris. But,
I'm in my home office.
Your home office.
Home
His
office.
is.
So yeah,
See, he doesn't have children yet, so he's not confined to the basement of dark, dank basements. But that's where I'm at.
There's a bookshelf on the other side, a couple bookshelves, and then I've got just some random. I've got my guitar here in case we want to do a little music therapy.
Music therapy. Maybe we should do a little music therapy with me later. But that's neither here nor there. So, like I said, it's today is the Feast of the Annunciation, which means it's March 25th, and it's 2020, which means for us here in Colorado, we're right smack dab in the middle of this social distancing and kind of going through this whole coronavirus thing, and it's been pretty darn crazy. I mean, I think a lot of people that I talk with, pastorally, clinically, whatever it is, people just don't know how to function, and I'm kind of curious. I mean, what's that been like for you, kind of working with people and working just in general?
Well, I mean, it's worth saying off the bat that it affects different people differently, and at Mount Tabor, we are still seeing clients via telecounseling and video conferencing software.
Right.
So we'll put that out there at the start. But I have friends who've been affected by it. I've had clients who've had to take pay cuts. Colorado right now is not where New York and California are in terms of the shelter-in-place orders, but we're like a hair's breadth away.
Well, the city of Denver is.
City of Denver is. City of
Denver
is. That's
City
correct.
of Boulder is. County of Denver, I should say.
Did you hear that at the 11th hour, the city of Denver decided that liquor stores and marijuana dispensaries are essential services?
This is actually an important psychological point. Got to stop hitting my mic here. What's particularly interesting, I was listening to the radio, and there was a person on there who had a really kind of keen point as to why liquor stores actually do need to remain open through it. And I was like, I don't understand it. It's like, because the last thing we need right now is a bunch of people to go into alcohol withdrawal symptoms and be flooding the hospitals. So they're going to keep them open. And I was like, okay,
dark thought. Yeah,
it's really, really dark, but at the same time, I think it makes a lot of sense. So that's not sure about the pot shops. Aside from they're just trying to keep people just chill, just chilled through this thing. But
someone I saw on Twitter put out, we know it's clear now that religion is not the opiate of the masses.
Yeah,
if you have you have liturgies canceled, but weed shops and liquor stores open.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So that's where we're at in Colorado. Is we have no public religious services. We have no dining in at restaurants. We have no access to libraries, and basically federal and government buildings and agencies are closed. Gyms are closed, and all schools are closed.
And I just got a text from my wife that I just happened to look over, because I'm a good husband and I check on things when my wife texts me. She just said Adams County just got shut down too.
Adams County, okay. Wow.
Which is one of the large counties here in Colorado. I know that means nothing to people outside of this. But.
Wait, Longmont is in which county?
Boulder, I want to say.
Boulder County, okay. So we'll see what happens there. Yeah, with Colorado, it's interesting, right? Because we're a very young, like you mentioned this the other day, we're a very young state and typically a pretty healthy state. I think on some of the biometrics like BMI and other things, Colorado is usually pretty close to the top. But high tourist traffic because of the ski resorts and the mountains. So you have a lot of people coming in and out of Colorado. And I think that's where some of the early cases were. It's also, a pretty warm state this time of year, although you get the occasional snowstorm, but it's very dry.
Yep.
So I don't know how that all factors in. I know that people are saying this virus doesn't like heat and humidity. So that's 1 out of 2 for us. now that we're kind of coming into spring.
Yeah,
I don't know.
of course it's supposed to
It's
snow
affected
in a couple of days too. So
Is it?
it is
Oh my
supposed to
God.
snow a couple of days. It's Colorado. I mean,
It's
this
Colorado.
is the way it
Yeah.
works. It's March in Colorado, which is technically our snowiest month, and then it goes directly into April, which is almost nothing.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
It's pretty funny. Well, one of the things that we did want to talk about today was just kind of some basic strategies about how to move forward for a lot of people that are just, I mean, boy, people like you and me, but people like out all throughout the world. What could be some basic strategies? And I wear one of these, and I've got some spiritual strategies. But I think the one that and obviously we're both therapists, so we've got some psychological strategies. But I think the real key about it is a mixture of both. And what is one particular thing that we were chatting about earlier that unifies both the psychological and the spiritual life together very, very importantly is the idea of a schedule. What a schedule is and how a schedule functions, and how that helps both psychologically and spiritually for everyone, really.
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit. Heads up. So that's okay.
Well, I think we'll figure it out. I'm sure everybody's got to watch their Netflix on their lunch hour right now. So, yeah. So tell me a little bit about
everyone stop streaming.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about the schedule. The idea of a schedule is important.
Schedule and routine.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's fair to say most people are working from home who aren't in healthcare right now. And that means, or either working from home or you're not working. People who've lost their jobs or lost income.
Right.
So you have more opportunities to procrastinate, and it's harder for a lot of people. I hear this all the time, to structure their day when they're working from home because there's so many distractions. I know that's the case for me. And you and I have talked about when we do our online sessions, we have some rituals and some protocols so that we don't get distracted during them. But my wife
do our best,
my wife had a virtual Bible study or like a virtual chat with her Bible study girls, the women in her group last night. And they were kind of sharing little tips for working from home. So I'll throw out a couple of them that I really liked. One was to structure your day so that you feel you have like a ritual that initiates your workday and a ritual that terminates your workday. And that can even be taking a walk. So it's like a walk to work and a walk home. You can wake up, get dressed, and then go for a walk around the block. And then once you get back inside, you take off your shoes and you're at work, or you keep them on if that makes you feel more like you're at work.
If you're one of those people that keeps their shoes on inside, or the other people, the very particular people who make you take them off, I don't know.
Whatever it is,
right.
Whatever it is. And then having a dedicated space, of course, is helpful too. Like, this room that I'm in right now, which I often use as an office for video counseling or for note writing or for just basic research. When I'm in the living room, I'm off the clock. When I'm in this room, I'm working. And then taking a lunch break like you normally would, building in as many kind of aspects of your typical work schedule. So trying to get creative and figuring out how to import those into your home life. Otherwise, you can get through the whole day. I mean, some people are more productive when they work from home. Other people are less productive because it's pretty easy to hop on social media and let the hours just fly by.
Yeah, absolutely. And the spiritual side to this reminded me about the concept of the orarium, which is a practice in the monastic life where I experienced when I was in the seminary. My spiritual director in the seminary he's a phenomenal older priest. His name was Father Matthew Fidua. So he developed a bunch of really cool retreats and tech retreats and all of those kinds of things. And they're just, he was just such a great guy. But he was my spiritual director, and he said, you need to make an orarium because you're kind of like a dog. it was Ryan back then, not Basil, but you're kind of like a dog, right? You go from one thing to another. You don't really have any direction. You kind of, start your day and, oh, well, I'm a little hungry. I guess it's about lunchtime. I'm going to go to the cafeteria for lunch. I'm going to, oh, well, it seems like it's time to study now. And you don't have any structure to your day. And you're like a dog just kind of walking around the seminary. Now, I was not the only seminarian that had that problem, by the way. But what he made me do was, and this was to an extreme because he was trying to fix my issue here. What he did is he made me knock out 15-minute blocks. So you just take an Excel spreadsheet and you just go, I don't know, I woke up at that time back at 5 a.m., right? And so 5 a.m., wake up, 5:15, get, whatever it is, and just break up the entire day into those 15-minute blocks. And the advantage of that is not that you have to absolutely, without question, do what is on that 15-minute block at a different time, but that you have something you could be doing or probably should be doing, as opposed to just, I'm just going to wander around aimlessly for the next 2 hours. It kind of gives a direction to it. Not that you're a slave to the orarium, but you paradoxically find freedom in the orarium.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think, even apart from working from home, building in like exercise is so important.
Yes, absolutely.
And building in prayer time. And when I say building in, I mean like exactly what you're saying, right? Because at least for me, I have this mentality where if I think, I'll get around to praying or I'll get around to working out, I don't. Other things will take precedence. So if I have it on my calendar, if I build it into my day, then I'm committed to that. I really like that advice.
And for the record, that's the same whether you're a cleric or if you're a layperson, if you're the Pope or if you're a Christian, just newly baptized Christian. I mean, it's always the same for us. Now, I think the other side to it is, with the lack of liturgies available on Sunday mornings or just daily mass, I assume that the adoration chapels, if they're not completely shut down now, they're moving in that direction. A lot of that, the question is how do people maintain a prayer life? And one of the things that has been really interesting to me is that a lot of my clients, a lot of my pastoral people that I'm working with in my parish, my parishioners, they're really struggling with this idea of how do we pray if we don't have mass? And I know why this came about. I think it's probably worth an entire conversation from a church history perspective. But a lot of this idea that we don't have other forms of prayer aside from the Mass is just inaccurate. It's just wrong. The sort of prayer of the people that is not the Mass is called the Liturgy of the Hours. And it actually is considered, it's the requirement for clergy in the Roman Church, not for the Byzantine Church, because ours is just so unbelievably complicated, you can never get it all done. But in the Roman Church, deacons and priests are required by canon law to pray it every single day. They're not required to pray the Mass by canon law every single day, and they're not required to go to a holy hour every single day. The actual thing that they're required to do is the Liturgy of the Hours. I have mine back from my Roman days. Again, this would be about 15 books, literally 15 books in the Byzantine Rite. But this is mine for the for the Liturgy of the Hours from the old Roman breviary, and it's phenomenal. It's Psalms, and it's a process of just praying through the Psalms. You get a couple of Psalms, usually 3 Psalms, and then a very short scripture passage, and then you just you just continually pray through it.
Break it down for our listeners. So you pray at different times during the day.
Yep. So you pray 5 times a day. Five times a day. Yep. So the way the church calculates the day starts from sundown to sundown. I know that surprises a lot of people, but that's why anticipatory masses, the Saturday evening, that's why those count.
That's also why the Triduum is the Triduum. The Easter
is the Triduum. Yep, absolutely. Yeah. It's because it's the night before. So it starts at sundown, right? Now, of course, anticipatory masses, I think the cutoff, at least in the United States, is 4 p.m., which, especially in Colorado, could be way before sundown, but it's besides the point. So it's sundown to sundown. What that begins with is with a service called Vespers. And Vespers starts in the evening. In the Roman Rite, it's right at sundown. In the Byzantine Rite, it starts before, and there's actually a specific hymn. It's called the O Gladsome Light or O Joyful Light, and that is actually done at the last minute of the light peeking over the horizon. It's so cool, but it's done at that time because it's a process of meditating on the fact that Christ is the light in the world, not just simply a sun out in orbit. I guess we're orbiting it, but whatever. It's about Christ being the light in the world. So then there's night prayer or Compline, and that's usually done just before bedtime.
Yep.
In the monasteries, there's also a midnight office, which I don't think anybody should be waking up lay people in the world should not be waking up at 3:00 in the morning, like setting alarms or anything like that. They shouldn't be waking up to be praying that.
I have a story about that, but
Okay. But so then there's a midnight office, and then typically around sunrise or early in the morning, you have a thing called matins, or in the Byzantine Rite, it's called orthros. The Roman Rite also has a thing called lauds, which would be a morning prayer process.
Right.
The Byzantine Rite doesn't have that. And then there's the minor hours. And typically the minor hours would be 6 a.m., 9 a.m., noon, and 3 p.m. Now, roughly sundown is at 6, go to bed at about 9. So the reality is that you're praying every 3 hours.
It's like you're at a hospital. When I worked as a patient care technician in a hospital for a hot second during grad school, you'd have patients that were like Q2 or Q4, like they had to be moved or shifted on their sides, or check their vitals every 2 hours. It's like that. Like you gotta check your spiritual vitals every 3 hours.
Absolutely. And in the monasteries, it was wonderful because it meant you would be going back to the monastery or back to the chapel every 3 hours. And the idea being you can't ever get 3 hours away from the chapel.
Right.
You really can't get more than an hour and a half away from the chapel. So you're always called back to prayer, always called back to prayer. The Roman Rite in the 1970s, I mean, so most people are very focused in on the way in which the Mass changed in the 1970s, but it also changed the Liturgy of the Hours. This is the best thing. The Roman change to the Liturgy of the Hours is the best thing that happened in the Roman Church throughout the entire 1970s. It's absolutely phenomenal. I know it sounds crazy when you're like looking through it and which ribbon do you flip to and how do you do all of these things, but by comparison to what it was and what it is in the Eastern Church, this everybody can figure out, and we're going to have a video coming out in the next couple of days about how to do it and the logic behind it, because it actually makes a lot of sense once you figure it out.
You can start with one. I think night prayer is great for people starting out. It's great for couples to pray together as well. So pick one. Or morning prayer as well is another good one. Start your day with morning
Start your day with morning prayer, and just slowly implement them. Don't do all of them. Do one or the other. And there's a link down in the description of the video about for the Amazon thing called Christian Prayer. It's just morning, evening, and night prayer. It doesn't have all the other extra stuff, and it's pretty cheap. I don't know what it is right now on Amazon because
you can find it online.
Changed, but you can find it online for free too. Yeah.
Yep.
I typically have to use a book because I get distracted if I'm trying to pray on a screen.
Oh, same.
It's just becomes a problem.
True.
But.
Yeah, same here. But this is a healthy. It's like there's a whole field of study called chronobiology or chronopsychobiology.
That sounds really fancy.
I know, isn't it? And it's like the study of the biological rhythms, the temporal patterns of human life and their effect on human health. So most people know about circadian rhythms, right? Circadian rhythms dictate your sleep-wake cycles, but human beings have several other shorter biological rhythms, like diurnal rhythms are one, and we have rhythms that sort of dictate our appetite. And it sounds like in seminary, like yours were kind of out of whack, and so this, your schedule helped you reset them, right? And,
I was a 17 and 18-year-old kid, just not with no direction.
That's true. That's true, actually. Yeah, aimless teenager.
Aimless teen. Yeah.
But what a great thing, God knows our psychology so well that He wants us to have a rhythm of life that's built around prayer. It's built around contact with Him, and keep us grounded according to our natural rhythms.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's spectacular, and I think it's really worth doing. And I think it's something that we can practice now when we're at home and it's literally just sitting right on our desk. It's something that we can constantly do. The other thing that really came to mind was the idea of the examine prayer. And I've talked about this a lot on the podcast. I talk about it almost all the time with my, with pastoral counselees or whatever else it is, whoever else I'm working with. And that's the idea of looking over your day in an Ignatian spirituality way. So the way of St. Ignatius of Loyola. And it's just looking over the day and saying, where was God present and where was God not present? Where was I not disposed to God's presence, right? So I might have woken up and I just had an incredible experience of God's grace, right? Then I can continue on about my day and it's like, well, I snapped at my wife and I wasn't disposed to God's presence there, and you can kind of go through your whole day about that. What's really cool about this is if you actually got an online class with the Mount Tabor Institute, mounttaborinstitute.com, that is being launched in the next couple of days, well, I guess a couple of weeks now, about the exam and prayer and kind of how to do it and what it looks like. So it's really going to be quite cool. Additionally, there's a resource down in the description about this, and it's just really quite exciting. And I think probably one of the most important things that most people can do on a regular basis, just reflect. To see the presence of God. Yeah.
Now is the time to reflect. I heard someone say in a
absolutely
walk last night. Now it's a lot of people's tendency right now is to do the opposite of that, because a lot of people are in panic mode. And when you're in panic mode, you don't have access to your prefrontal cortex, that thinking part of your brain. So I think a lot of these, in particular the exam and prayer, are great opportunities to take a step back, take a breath, and actually reflect on the way you're living. There's a video I shared on the Mount Tabor Counseling Facebook page from Russ Harris, who is a popularizer of acceptance and commitment therapy. Deacon Basil knows that's a thing I get really into. And it's a little like acronym that basically gives you some principles for how to deal with the coronavirus crisis. Now, a big part of that is committing to your values. And the way it's phrased is so beautiful. It was phrased in this little animation as what kind of person do you want to be during this crisis? And that exam and prayer is such a good tool for figuring that out, because you're reflecting on your day and you're reflecting on your moments where you were living out your Christian vocation and the moments where you fell short. And then you're recommitting to living better the next day, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
With God's grace. It's like, yeah, absolutely. I can't control the world, and I can't control which states have shelter in place ordinances and which don't. But I can decide when I wake up, who do I want to be today? What kind of person do I want to be? How do I want to live? And how do I want to be remembered as having lived through this crisis?
Yep, absolutely. And I think that, it's so important, so important. I think that idea of committing to it is really pretty important. But there were some other things that kind of resources, psychological resources that we had talked about beforehand. And of course, I didn't write them down. So
I want to share one more prayer resource.
Please.
So you mentioned you don't advise lay people to wake up at 3 a.m. So I actually happened to wake up at 4:30 this morning. And I kind of puttered around and fell back asleep, but remembered before I did that the Pope has called the universal, like the whole church, the lay faithful and priests and religious, to pray with him at noon Rome time, pray the Our Father for the intention of an end to this pandemic. And noon Rome time is 5 a.m. Colorado time. So it was actually very fortuitous this morning. So that was one case where it was okay to, I woke up, I waited half an hour, I prayed with the Holy Father, and then went back to sleep. So there's something else. If you're able to do some kind of group prayer, so that's a great way to feel connected, right? Because we don't have the public liturgy. But at that moment, I knew I was praying with millions of other Catholics around the world.
Absolutely. And part of it is that when you are connected, if you wake up at 3 a.m., I'm not saying don't pray. But I'm saying don't set an alarm so that you wake up at 3 a.m.
Yeah, don't intentionally. Don't disrupt your circadian rhythms.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think that is really important. But I think that connection with other people, and I think you said your wife had that online Bible study. I think that's phenomenal.
Yes,
those kind of activities, and I think
so do that.
One of the things that my community is doing is we are setting up just I'm picking a family. They're picking families, and it's just on dinner or lunchtime or whatever. We're just doing this exact thing through Zoom, where we just set up. And so this Saturday we're going to have a bunch of people just Zooming their dinner time at about 6. We're just all going to get together and have dinner in our respective homes, but do it digitally, and just kind of have a chit chat about what's going on. So I think that's really cool, and really
Yeah,
important.
that's maybe another tip to really emphasize is human beings have a basic need for relatedness,
Yeah.
and it's harder to meet that need. It was already hard to begin with. We've talked about on the podcast. You've mentioned that there's a great book called Bowling Alone.
Yep.
We live in a very isolated culture. Generally, more people live alone in America in the 21st century than anywhere or at any time in human history.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have a quarantine on top of that. So
Right.
if we were already, screwed in terms of our ability to meet our relatedness, basic need of relatedness, now, like forget it. So do whatever you can. Reaching out to people is great. I find that, now more than ever, we all have an excuse to reach out to people we haven't reached out to in a while. All it takes is a simple like, hey, how are you doing? Checking in on you. I have many friends in New York, for example. So they're in the epicenter of the American coronavirus pandemic. So a great opportunity to say, hey, are you okay?
Well, and this was actually one thing that I have pointed out a number of times, is that you have the best excuse to rekindle relationships from the past.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You have the best excuse ever, because people, paradoxically, people who are psychologically connected and are psychologically healthy are those that are emailing people say, hey, I need to stay sane. Can we FaceTime dinner tonight? I mean, those are like, that's one sign of like people finding ways of being psychologically healthy. So I think that's so important, and so good. Some of the other things that we're doing here, I think these were some of the things that we had talked about before, is that we are doing online counseling, and it looks an awful lot like this video actually. It's the same kind of process. You have the ability to share content, and so I've worked with clients through worksheets and all of those.
Mm-hmm.
It's really quite slick, and one of the things that we're really doing is we're expanding at Mount Tabor, just because we see this need across the board. We see this need. So if that's of something that could be beneficial to people anywhere in Colorado, Wyoming, or Texas, we're certainly available. If you're outside of those states, or if you're looking for other kinds of therapies that are not online, or, well, they probably all be online at this point, but if you're looking for other therapies, CatholicTherapist.com is one resource, or just checking with your local diocese or archdiocese.
We also runs therapeutic support group. Well, we run support groups, which are like not strictly therapeutic in nature, more of like a peer support group with a facilitator, and so those actually can cross state lines.
Yep, absolutely. And so those are on our website as well.
Yeah.
And I've got one for adults, one for parenting, and one for teens, all going right now, and it's really cool. And they're it's you just sign up, you get a link through Zoom just like this, and there you go. You're off to the races. So it's really quite cool.
Let's take a moment to validate that people are having heightened anxiety right now.
Yeah.
And that's normal. That's to be expected.
Yeah, I think I said in one of my talks that if you don't have anxiety right now, there's actually something wrong with you, because you're
right.
actually not connected with the realities of the world right now.
Yeah. And I want to name the source of it too. In my experience with my clients and the people I know, the communities I know, the single biggest source of that anxiety right now is uncertainty.
Yeah.
And that in particular, humans have a hard time with. We don't like that. A lot of us really want to kind of control our world and know exactly what's going to happen and make it nice and predictable and orderly. And here we have a pandemic. We don't know exactly how it's going to end. We don't know when it's going to end. We don't know when businesses are going to be open again. We don't know what Easter is going to look like. We don't know what our work situation is going to look like. So really just, validating that and encouraging people who are experiencing that heightened anxiety to reach out now more than ever. Now's not the time to kind of close yourself off from the help that God wants you to get.
Yep. Absolutely. And there's no shame in that. In fact, it's actually a sign of strength and to reach out to other people, whether that be professionally or in a support group, or even in just individually. The last thing that we are doing is we've got some online classes. We've got a class, mounttaborcounseling.com/parenting, which is on how to parent through the quarantine. There's an online class that's being launched tomorrow. Got a little delayed, but it's launched tomorrow, and it's about just emotional parenting and how to help our kids emotionally parent, or how to help our kids emotionally through this thing. We've got a a class on the examine prayer coming out. We've got a couple of things about emotional regulation coming out, and all of these are classes. I mean, they're done with slides, they're done with worksheets, they're done with all sorts of really just cool stuff. And the other thing is that we're going to be doing these talks on a relatively regular basis. We got some ideas of moving forward, and we've got these talks, and we've got a podcast. So there's a lot out there for people, a lot of things that we can connect over. So it's really, I mean, it's scary, it's anxiety provoking, but it's also, at least for me, maybe this is my thinking on it, but it's an opportunity for things to be better afterwards.
Yes.
After we get through this, than where we were at when we started this.
And that's how we frame this whole thing, right? This quarantine is an opportunity for spiritual growth.
Right.
An opportunity to kickstart spiritual growth and health in a way that you've never had before.
Right. Absolutely.
So maybe we'll recap really quick some of our recommendations that we've come to through this little dialogue today.
Number one,
want you to set up a routine. Don't be aimless. Don't be like a wandering dog that kind of eats whenever they want.
Like the teenage Basil. Yep.
Don't be like teenage Basil. 2, recommit to your prayer life. And that can be praying a morning prayer, an evening prayer, or any of the office prayers, praying the examine prayer, or praying the Our Father with the Holy Father.
Yep. And
3, reach out to other people. Don't forget your human need for relatedness. And 4, reach out to professionals or friends for help with the anxiety and the fear that many of us are likely experiencing.
Yep. We forgot the 5th one.
Oh, go for it.
Which is give a like to the video. Let us know how we're doing, and let us continue on. And we'll continue to do these as long as there's interest. And so, by all means, give us a like, share it on social media, and
Would you close us in virtual prayer, Deacon Basil?
Sure. Through the prayers of our Holy Fathers, O Lord Jesus Christ, our God, have mercy on us. O Heavenly King, the Comforter, the Spirit of Truth, who art everywhere present and fillest all things, treasury of blessings and giver of life, come and abide in us, cleanse us of all impurities, and save our souls, O Good One. O Holy Father, Physician of souls and bodies, you sent your only begotten Son, our Lord Jesus Christ, to heal every infirmity and to deliver us from death. Heal your servants of every spiritual and bodily ill which afflicts them. Restore them by the grace of your Christ, through the prayers of our most holy Lady, the Mother of God, and ever Virgin Mary, and of all your saints. For you are our God, are the fountain of healing, and we glorify you through your only begotten Son and your consubstantial Spirit, with now and ever and unto the ages of ages. Amen. Through the prayers of our fathers, the Lord Jesus Christ, our God, have mercy on us. Amen. All right, we'll see you guys next time.
Be safe.